All right, what a day. Semifinal Saturday of the SEC men's tournament officially over, and now we are down to two. What's up? It's Elijah Campbell from the postgame show on 107.5 The Game, just back from Bridgestone Arena, where now we have a championship game set up between Tennessee and Florida. Tennessee beating Auburn by 5 earlier in the day, and then Florida beating Alabama, what feels like to be a billion points. Today was an interesting day. I think this is the first time maybe in the history of the SEC tournament. This is not an official stat. This is an Elijah Campbell special, where the semifinal Saturday consisted of 4 teams that have legitimate title chances. I think all 4 of the teams that played today have a real shot to be able to make a very deep run into March or late into March and early April. And there's a lot of takeaways to come from this. So we'll go ahead and break down both of these games individually and then talk a little bit about this Tennessee-Florida matchup. Michael Lynn comes in on our comment section, says, great day of sports. Michael, you are correct. This is one of the best days of sports. And then tomorrow on Selection Sunday is another one of the best days of sports. Love this weekend every year. Love covering the SEC tournament every year. Been watching it every year since I was a child. This one has had so much build-up and so much hype to it. And for the most part, it's really followed through. The cream has kind of risen to the top here with the 4 double byes end up playing in today's games. And then we saw a lot of really good basketball. And Florida made a statement that they might be the best team in the country. Tennessee made a statement that they might be the best defense that anybody has seen this season. We'll go and start with Tennessee. Tennessee winners over the Auburn Tigers by a score of 70-65. This one started off really fast. I said last night in the stream that we might get another rock fight of a game in the 50s because both these teams just defend at such a high level, and Tennessee really relies on having to win some games in lower scoring margins. But today, I mean, that was one of the biggest takeaways from this game was how Tennessee was able to put together, well over a point per possession, 1.13 to be specific, against an Auburn defense that had them in clamps when they played back at Auburn back in January. And the thing with this Tennessee team all year for me has been who steps up to hit shots late in games when games are tight. Sometimes Tennessee will have offensive possessions where the ball doesn't get inside the perimeter. They run a lot of floppy action, which sometimes it can take a while for plays to develop because you're just running off 2 different sets of screens. And Rick Barnes, after the game today, said one of the reasons why the offense was so fluid is because they ran their floppy action really well with Jordan Gainey running off of screens, Chaz Lanier running off of screens. Chaz Lanier got hot early, kind of like he did in the Texas game yesterday. His jump shot was falling early in the game. He only finished with 12 points, but hit a couple of really big jumpers, including a jumper late in the game that I believe pushed it up to a 5-point game. This is one where Tennessee at one point did lead 64-52 with about 6 minutes left. And really at no point in that game did I think Auburn was completely out of it, just because that team, like that can end up going on a run and hitting a ton of threes, getting a lot of rebounds. I think for the most part, Tennessee did a really good job on Johni Broome. I know his final stat line is really impressive. He scored 23 points, ended up grabbing 7 rebounds. 3 of those were offensive, and those 3 offensive rebounds came up huge in the first half when Auburn's shot wasn't really falling. Their outside shot wasn't falling. You knew it would eventually at some point during the game, but and actually, really, it did. I mean, they finished 6 for 21, but a lot of those threes, some of those threes came in the second half. I know Miles Kelly hit a couple of huge jump shots in that game. But Tennessee, to their credit, made sure that they weren't getting a lot of open looks toward the end of the game. Rick Barnes said in the press conference afterward, the whole strategy was to go one-on-one with Johni Broome in the post. They were digging a little bit off the ball, and he had an occasional double whenever he would put it on the deck. But they kind of abandoned that late in the game and figured they'd play their chances of playing him straight up and then taking away 3-point shooters. And that ultimately turned out to be really smart. And Auburn's quality of possessions late in the game I didn't think were really high. And that's credit to Tennessee's defense, especially Jahmai Mashack. I think that guy, I said it last night, I'm going to say it again today. That guy's one of the best on-ball defenders. He's one of the best off-ball defenders. He's one of the best defensive players in all of college basketball. And I know Zakai Ziegler is the 2-time SEC Defensive Player of the Year, and deservingly so. I'm not going to disparage that. But Jahmai Mashack might be the most valuable defensive player in the SEC. And he single-handedly changed the way certain momentum runs happened today. He had a couple of really impressive steals away from the ball. He was diving all over the floor. Like, this guy is a high energy guy. When I talk about Jemai Mashack, I rarely mention stats because his stats don't tell the story of his impact. He had another great day today, whether it be chasing Chad Baker-Mazara off screens, whether it be getting switched on to Denver Jones or playing Miles Kelly. When you're playing a team like Auburn and you decide to guard Johni Broome one-on-one, as good as Johni Broome is at getting into the paint and scoring, he was 9 of 13 from 2 today. And a lot of that was one-on-one post moves or from offensive rebounds. But the Tennessee defensive strategy of trying to take away the three-point shooters, I think, made the biggest difference in them being able to limit Auburn as much as possible. Auburn's a team that's played so many times this year, 1.2, 1.3 points per possession. They were a smidge over just 1. So 1.05 is the final tally that I'm looking at. And a lot of that comes from the shot quality. Auburn's shot quality, even in the Ole Miss game, I didn't love. I thought Ole Miss played good defense, but I didn't love the shots that Auburn got in a lot of those possessions. I didn't love a lot of the shots they got in crunch time today. And again, Jemai Mashack did a fantastic job of whenever Broome had the ball and Tennessee would either dig or just go straight up one-on-one, whether it be Cade Phillips or Felix Okpara. Okpara, who did a phenomenal job, and I thought it was just a travesty that he fouled out on a phantom foul call late in the game, and I thought that would probably have been a little more impactful than it did. I thought that was an atrocious whistle, an unfortunate break for Okpara, especially considering how well he played Broome. But with those two guys playing Broome about as well as you can, because you can only do so much to stop that guy, Mashack took away a lot of the passing lanes to other players. Zakai Ziegler as well. Zakai Ziegler's ball pressure is always fantastic. Tennessee extended their pressure full court a couple times during this game. Auburn did a good job of picking that apart enough to be able to get really good shots, so Tennessee went away from it. But in the half-court defense, this Tennessee team is about as good as anybody without ever having a trap. If you look at some of the top teams defensively in KenPom, you have Tennessee at 3, and St. John's is at number 1. I think Houston's at number 2. Houston blitzes a lot of ball screens, and they're very aggressive, right? And they double team a lot, and they use their length and athleticism. They double a lot. St. John's will double some, but not to the frequency that Houston does. Tennessee doesn't really have to double at all. That's my favorite thing about them defensively. They don't have to resort to double teaming to force turnovers because Jemai Mashack is so good at putting so much pressure on the ball. Zakai Ziegler is so good at putting pressure on the ball that they don't have to get too creative with defensive scheme because they have 5 guys on the floor at all times who can guard their man one-on-one, and that's a luxury to have. What makes that different, I guess, from St. John's or Houston can switch 1 through 5. St. John switches 1 through 5. I don't think Tennessee necessarily can switch 1 through 5 per se, but they've got about 3 or 4 players on the perimeter that are very switchable. And that's why Tennessee is where they are. They'll go through stretches this year where offensively they disappear for 5 or 6 minutes at a time, or they don't know what they're doing on offense. There's no offensive identity at times. Sometimes it's just running Chaz Lanier and Jordan Gainey off a floppy action and just seeing what happens. Or sometimes it's Zakai Ziegler with 10 seconds on the shot clock getting into the lane and then nobody getting open, and it's taking a contested shot for a guy that's 5'9", and a lot of shot clock violations have arise for that team this year. To answer, Michael, your question, you asked if Zakai Ziegler gets drafted. It's a very interesting question. If he was 6'4", he'd be drafted in the first round. I think his height is going to deter a lot of teams. And that's very unfair to him. Zakai Ziegler cannot control how tall he is. There is no magic, pill to take to make him a little bit taller. But if he were 6'4", and with the way he guards and the way he can competently make a jump shot, but the way he guards, his leadership, a lot of the intangible stuff, and the way he can pass too. I mean, for somebody his size too, playing against much bigger players, the way he's able to get into the lane and facilitate is really impressive. And that's what's made his entire career impressive. He's had one of the favorite careers I've seen of any player in the SEC over the last few years. The kid's tough as nails. I don't think we'll ever see a player in the SEC, and I could be wrong, this could be freezing cold take in like 10 years, but a 5'9" player will probably never win back-to-back SEC Defensive Player of the Years. I just don't find that as a possibility. I don't see that as something that happens, but that he's a special player. He's a really special player with what he does, especially off the ball and on the ball. What he is defensively, and the heartbeat of him being the offense too, running the show. Even when it does get a little clunky. He's not afraid to take a shot to get them out of a slump. And he had a fantastic day today too. But I think he had maybe his best offensive game, considering the stakes and against the team that they were facing. To play against that Auburn defense and to be able to score 20 points and, at 5'9", be 4 of 5 from 2. He did a fantastic job of drawing fouls. I think Tennessee today preyed on Auburn's aggressiveness defensively. Auburn will gamble on defense. That's kind of the thing. Tennessee doesn't gamble anywhere as much as Auburn does when it comes to jumping passing lanes. They'll do it some. Every team does it some. But Auburn is a very aggressive defense, and they love blocking shots. The whole goal in life is to ultimately marry a partner who loves you the way Auburn loves blocking shots and making highlight reels. It's kind of their thing. And sometimes that aggressiveness can bite you in the rear if you play a really crafty offense. And sometimes, while Tennessee may not be the most skilled offensive team or a complete offensive team, one of their easy buttons on that side of the floor is getting to the free throw line. Zakai Ziegler, at his height, does a really good job of manipulating what the contact looks like, right? If there's a little bit of contact while he's going up, he might make it look like he got shot. And that's a skill. And it gets him the free throw line and got him the free throw line 9 times today, and he went a perfect 9 for 9. Tennessee as a team shooting free throws really took advantage of it. I think Tennessee's ability to draw fouls and then make free throws really was the separator as well. I talked about the defense being the separator it is, but what iced it was their performance on the free throw line. The officiating was a little touchy both ways, and it was bad both ways. So I don't want to say that, this outcome was completely, determined by officiating. You will never hear me say that ever. I've always thought that's a lame excuse for anybody to lose a game, to say it's officials. There's always something you can do in a game that can change the outcome, considering bad officiating is a baked-in part of every single result in athletics. But it was a very softly called game, so contact below the rim was oftentimes rewarded to the offense and not given to the benefit of the opposing defense. And Tennessee was a little better at getting to the line than Auburn. Auburn attempted 22 free throws. Tennessee attempted 27. But if you look up and down, not just the total team makes in attempts, because Tennessee as a team was 25 of 27, shot 93% from the free throw line. That's going to win you a lot of games if you get there that many times, right? But Jordan Gainey was a perfect 8 for 8. Zakai Ziegler was a perfect 9 for 9. Darlinson Dubar came in and gave Tennessee 15 great minutes. That was a role player that Tennessee desperately needed, considering they are not a deep team at all. They cannot dig into that bench the way they have had in the past, and the way a lot of teams that you would consider to be legitimate national title contenders can dig into their bench. But Dubar gave him 6 points off the bench and was perfect 2 for 2 from the line, had 2 great drives. And as a team, of course, you make that many free throws, you're going to put yourself in a position. Auburn got there 22 times, but here's the thing. They went 13 to 22. And Johni Broome specifically was 5 of 12 from the line. And I still believe he's the player of the year, still has my vote. And I already, submitted the vote, so I cannot change it, but I wouldn't anyway, even if you gave me a mulligan. But tonight proved that he can find a way to hurt his own team if he's at the free throw line. That's the biggest thing today, too, because Auburn at one point had a chance to tie the game late after they almost erased that 12-point deficit that Tennessee acquired with 6 minutes left. And Johni Broome misses both free throws. Rebound gets tipped, goes out of bounds. Still Tennessee ball. Too many points left at the line. This game could have been a lot better. I think we'd be in overtime if he was able to knock down those free throws. And ultimately, you can kind of sum the game down because there's a lot of similarities. I don't think statistically, and just from the eyeball test too, either team separated themselves by that much. Like when Tennessee went up 12, you just knew Auburn was going to make a run because of how good they are on offense. And Auburn can score in so many different ways. And that's why they're still a legit championship contender, is because they can beat you with the 3-ball. They can get into the lane, draw fouls. They can't just dump it into Johni Broome and have him get you points. And they did that a couple times. Just dump the ball into Johni Broome, bam, easy button, 2 points. That happened a few times today. But ultimately, the 2 big differences to me in this game, Auburn clanking free throws and Tennessee taking advantage of the free throws they got, and then Tennessee changing the way they guarded Broome and taking away the 3-point shooters. Oftentimes, teams will try to double Broome, and by the time they do it, he's such a good passer, he finds an open 3-point shooter, and if Miles Kelly or Denver Jones or Chad Baker Mazara are open, or Tahad Pettiford, they're going to knock them down. And Rick Barnes didn't want them to beat them from three, and they did a really good job of sticking to their assignments and making Auburn shoot the toughest shot possible. It was a defensive clinic by Tennessee in that game, even though the first 10 minutes were a little hectic and from a scoring perspective. Auburn put up 17 there, and then after that, 16 in the last 10 minutes of the first half, and then only 15 in the first 10 minutes of the second half before, they were able to get a run late in the game. But Auburn's in a weird spot. They're still probably going to be the number one overall seed in this in the NCAA tournament, and I don't know how I feel about it because they've lost 3 of 4 going in. And it's really – I saw somebody tweet the question, and I can't answer it because I don't know. I need to look this up. If there's ever been an overall number one seed in the NCAA tournament that has lost 3 of their final 4 games. This is a team that was 27-2 just a few weeks ago when they clinched the SEC championship by beating Kentucky on the road, and then Tennessee beat Alabama on that same day. They clinched the regular season title. Auburn has not been the same since. If anything, they're not a completely different team since, but they've been falling short in the thin margins required to be able to win really big games. Something feels weird. Something feels a little off with them right now. Maybe it's also statistical regression. Maybe they did win some close games in conference play. Maybe this is just natural regression. You're not going to win every one-score game you play. You're never going to win every game that is decided by 5 points or less in every game you play. You're not going to win all of those. You're not going to lose all of those. So we'll see, but it is kind of weird to see a team be the number one overall seed in the NCAA tournament after losing 3 of their last 4 to end the season. For Tennessee, Joe Lunardi says that they can't play into a 1, that their status as a 2 is pretty solidified. I have a hard time believing that if they beat Florida. We're going to get into how good Florida was. We're going to get into that. But if Tennessee beats Florida, that'd be the second time they've beaten Florida. They would have also beaten Auburn. They would have also beaten Alabama, which gives them a really good record against the best teams in this league. They also won at Texas A&M, which was the 5 seed in this league. They beat Missouri at home, who was the 7 seed in this league. Really, their worst losses are just to Kentucky. And Kentucky, at the time they played, is a really good team. Kentucky right now is a shell of itself, a total mash unit because of all the injuries. So the loss looks worse now than it did. Those 2 losses did a couple months ago. But at the time, those aren't bad losses. And if you understand the context, you understand that it's not that bad. They did lose at Vanderbilt. I guess maybe that could be considered the worst loss. But this Tennessee team has a resume. I think it's still good enough to maybe get themselves into a 1 spot. And you kind of compare resumes right now. Florida, Todd Golden said after they beat Alabama today, believes that his team is a lock for a 1 seed. So do some quick resume comparison. Florida, number 4 in the net. Tennessee, number 6. Tennessee has 11 quad 1 wins. Florida has 10. Tennessee has 6 losses in the quad 1. Florida has 4. So Florida's 10-4. Tennessee 11-6. Neither team has a loss outside the quad 1. The average net ranking of the teams Alabama or Florida beats is ranked 100. Tennessee is 98, so very slight edge to Tennessee. And then the average net ranking of the teams that have beaten Florida is 17, and for Tennessee it is 18, so a very narrow edge for Florida. These are very comparable resumes to me. These are the same resumes. Florida's now number 2 in KenPom, and Tennessee, after the win today, has moved up to 5. So there's 2 top 5 teams in KenPom. They have very similar resumes. They split with each other during the regular season. I know Todd Golden realistically is saying that they should be a 1 seed, but this year's a little different, buddy. I think Auburn's clinched theirs. And who knows if Arizona beats Houston, which is possible. It's a 1-point game with 5 minutes left. If Arizona beats Houston, then maybe both of these teams get 1s, and it's Auburn, Duke, Tennessee, Florida. I think that's very possible, because if Tennessee beats Florida, I don't understand how you have Florida as a 1 and Tennessee not as a 1, considering if they will win tomorrow, that'd be 2 wins for Tennessee against Florida, Florida having 1 against Tennessee. Very similar resumes. You have a season series. There's a way to decide this, and it could be on a neutral floor. So that being said, we'll move on to Florida. One more thing from this Tennessee thing. Michael also says if Milicic keeps getting better from 3, he's going to be a big problem. And Michael, I agree if he does it consistently. That's my biggest gripe with Igor Milicic this year, is that he is very inconsistent. He is incredibly inconsistent. every now and then you'll get a game where he scores 17 and gets like 13 rebounds, and a lot of those are offensive. He's a really good offensive rebounder. And for a big guy, he can pass the ball really well, and he puts the ball on the deck with ease. He does not look uncomfortable, right? There's some big men, they put the ball on the floor, and they look like a fish out of water. Igor Milicic is not one of them. He's very versatile, and he's obviously a great defensive player because on a Rick Barnes coach team, you ain't playing if you can't play great defense. But the biggest thing with him can sometimes, I think, be focus. That he had 2 back-to-back horrific offensive possessions during Auburn's 10-0 run to cut the lead from 12-2, where on one, Zakai Ziegler's coming off like a screen, is trying to throw him a pass, and he's not paying attention, and the ball bounces off his hands out of bounds. Hands are just not in position to catch the ball. And then on another ball screen, Zakai Ziegler is coming off this ball screen, and he's looking for Milicic to cut backdoor. And clearly he's expecting him to do that. It's clearly part of the play because Ziegler throws that bounce pass there where he's supposed to be, but instead of Milicic catching it and then going up to the rim to score, he is in the corner, not moving. That ball goes out of bounds, and Rick Barnes immediately yanks Milicic. That tells me the part of the play was for Ziegler to come around that screen and for Milicic to cut backdoor, catch the ball, get a layup, or draw a foul. And he went brain dead for 2 plays today. And those were 2 crucial plays that Auburn helped use to get themselves back into the game. Tennessee had a chance to really put a dagger into Auburn in a couple of those possessions. And because of Igor Milicic, they weren't able to do it. So when he's engaged and when he's maximizing his skill set, he is an incredibly valuable player to this team. You just don't get it every night from him. With Florida, this game was fascinating. Coming into this game, I was like, all right, first one to 100 wins. And technically that was true. Florida wins 104-82. And at halftime, it looked like that was going to be the case too, but it would be a closer race to 100, right? At halftime, I believe Florida had a 2-point lead. Florida was up 47-45 at the break. It was really back and forth. Both teams shot the ball really well. Alabama has been so good on like ball screens and Spain actions that lead into lob dunks. Like they get more lob dunks on Spain action and just being able to take advantage of a team playing drop coverage better than anybody I've seen all year. Cliff Amore was awesome in the first half catching lobs. LeBaron Philon was awesome getting into the lane and being able to toss up some lobs to LeBaron Philon. Mark Sears is always really good at getting into the lane, but Cliff Amore ended up having 12 points in this game, and I'm willing to bet that most of those came in the first half. Let's see. He had 4. He had 2 dunks. Then I think he had a couple. Oh, no, that was second half box score. I can't read. My apologies. Yeah, 8 points in the first half, and a lot of those came on dunks. In the second half, Florida tightened up. Florida tightened up a lot, and they had a 15-0 run at one point in that half that really separated themselves. Once they got that 15-point run, they really weren't looking back. And defensively, Todd Golden said after the game that they changed their game plan a little bit to where, or not necessarily changed their game plan. They made an adjustment to where they took a different stance defensively, focused more on cutting off driving lanes. Because when Alabama gets in the paint, it's either they're going to score because they're one of the top 3 best 2-point scoring teams in the country, or they're going to kick it out for 3, and then Chris Youngblood or whoever it is, Aiden Holloway, whoever it is that catches and shoots it, is going to knock it down. They're a really solid 3-point shooting team, and when they get hot, they can score 100 like that in a game, right? We've seen that many times this year. They can get in track meets, and Alabama wants to get in them, and they can win them. Florida was also really good at getting back on defense. These are 2 teams that play very similar styles. They get the rebound, and they want to get out in transition. Florida was just better in transition. Florida got into their full court sets. They got the ball past half court quickly after makes and misses from Alabama, and Alabama was just a little too sloppy on offense. Florida doing a fantastic job of just kind of turning off driving lanes to the basket. They started switching a little bit of stuff too. I mean, they showed their versatility today. Not a single player for Florida played over 30 minutes. Todd Golden mentioned that after the game, and that's one of the reasons why they are so good. I think Thomas Houck had another great day. He was kind of the X factor in them beating Missouri. I think he was kind of an X factor today against Alabama. Now, he maybe not from the scoring perspective as much. He still had 11 points and knocked down a 3. But defensively, he matches what Alabama does perfectly because he's 6'7", and can guard wings and forwards So if he switches on to anybody or they want to play small, he's the perfect player to throw in there and do that. And he's physical enough to where if he gets switched on a big down low, he can hold his own. So Thomas Hauck still, to me, continues to be one of the best kind of role players in college basketball, and that's one of the reasons why Florida's so good. And then a few times too, man, when Florida gets out in the break, you're at their mercy. Alabama runs fast break offense really well. Florida does it the best. And today was a perfect example of how good they could be. Walter Clayton hit 6 threes today. A lot of that came in transition. He had 6 assists today. A lot of that came in transition. They only had 15 fast break points. 15 fast break points is a lot for most teams, but considering they had 20 plus against Missouri last night, this almost feels pedestrian for them. But that's the type of team this is. And as somebody who's now watched this team in person 3 different times, I can tell you that it hits different when you're watching them in person and seeing how fast they are. They are just so fast, and they get into what they want to do in the full court. As soon as they get the rebound, they're into their offense. And sometimes when people talk about pace of play, you can play a lot of possessions if you just shoot early in the shot clock, but you still might not move hastily. This Florida team is, I guess, technically outside the top 50 in KenPom in tempo, but they play faster than the number 1 team. Like Alabama has generates the most possessions. Florida plays the fastest. 2 different types of basketball speed here. You watch Florida run the lanes, and you're amazed at how many guys can run different type of lanes too. And it doesn't even matter if the bigs roll into the rim in the middle of the floor or is coming down the side of the floor. They're great at throwing lobs. They are great at pushing the ball in transition. I know that Walter Clayton got a rebound in the second half and immediately looks down the floor and finds Elijah Martin, and just like a quarterback, launches that thing about 80 feet, hits Elijah Martin in stride, dunk. And at that point, it was about 17, 18-point lead, and Florida's really running away with it. A game like today, where against a solid Alabama defense, and Florida going 1.3 points per possession, it showed me that this might be the best team in America right now. Auburn's been the best team all season long, but in the last 3 or 4 weeks, Florida might be the best team in the country right now as we sit March 15th of 2025. Florida's probably the best team in the country right now. Here's my thing with them. There's nothing they can't do. They can play fast. If they slow it down in the half court, they can play through their bigs. Alex Condon wasn't efficient around the rim today, but he was still a great cog in the machine, was still be able to score whenever he got the ball in the post. He still had a couple of assists. He still initiated a lot of the half-court offense through dribble handoffs. Elijah Martin can score 15 on any given night. Thomas Hauck, even off the bench, I told you about his positional versatility, but he can also give you 15 on any given night. Ruben Chinyelu, kind of one of the more unspoken players on this Florida team, especially in that front court, had 10 points tonight too. There's not a lot of games where Ruben Chinyelu is getting you 10 points. He did it tonight. A lot of these guys can beat you in different ways. Will Richard can knock down threes in transition. He can also hit catch and shoot threes with the best of them. And Walter Clayton can finish inside too. I mean, he can put the ball on the deck and score around the rim, as well as hit 6 threes, as well as be just a lights-out shooter. This team has so many different ways to beat you. Half court, full court, defense turning into offense, you name it. This team can do it, and they have incredible depth off the bench. Denzel Aberdeen comes in as a lockdown defender at the guard position. Micah Handlockton comes off the bench and is a 7-footer who is an elite shot blocker and can play drop coverage and deflect lobs and do all types of stuff and be able to finish around the rim too relatively efficiently. But he's a great rim protector. And Florida's interior defense has gotten significantly better since he returned to the team from his broken leg injury in the SEC championship game last year. He came back on February 14th against South Carolina. We saw what he did to the Gamecocks in limited action. But he has been a massive addition. And Pete Thamel asked Todd Golden after the game today why his team's able to play their best right now. A lot of teams try to do this, but not many teams succeed in playing their best basketball in mid-March. And Todd Golden says because now they're finally healthy. You think about it, that's true. Alex Condon missed a few games this year. Walter Clayton missed a few games this year. Micah Handlockton, again, like I mentioned, didn't play until February 14th. A lot of these guys have missed some time this year, and now this is the healthiest they've been all year, and that might explain why they look as good as they do right now. And that's scary for the rest of college basketball. Florida is a legitimate 1 seed in this tournament, even if they lose to Tennessee. That's the best team in America right now for my money. So This is all building up into being one of the best SEC championship games ever. Two contrasting styles. Todd Golden, after the game, did mention that, because somebody asked about how Tennessee plays, like their tempo. Tennessee does like to play in the half court a lot, especially on defense. Tennessee defensively in the half court is about as good as you'll see anybody play in college basketball, especially in straight man-to-man and not switching. Todd Golden said whoever dictates the tempo is going to win this game, because when they played at Florida, Florida hurried them up, forced them into bad shots, and then just outran them on the other end of the floor and were getting easy buckets. But when they came to Tennessee without Zakai Ziegler and Chaz Lanier and Igor Milicic, Tennessee beat them like a drum. It was the worst beating Florida's had all season long. They went to Thompson-Boling Arena, and Tennessee did everything they could and smothered them. I think they had 44 points late in the game. They might have finished that game with 44 points, if I'm not mistaken. I'm kind of looking at Tennessee scores. Yeah, 64-44. That Florida offense on February 1st held to 44 points at Tennessee. So those were two different beatdowns in the two meetings this year. And Todd Golden called them anomalies in the presser. I agree. I think those two are anomalies. That's not going to be an indication of what happens tomorrow in the SEC championship. It's going to be much closer, but I do agree with Todd Golden's most about whoever dictates the style of the game will win the game. If Florida succeeds at getting back or at advancing the ball off of misses and makes and making Tennessee have to play a full court game, I think Florida can win this thing by 10. But if Tennessee gets back on defense and still able to apply really good ball pressure and hurry them up, because Walter Clayton said something that stuck with me after the Missouri game. He said Missouri gave them defensive issues because they made them play hurried. They play fast all the time, and he made note of that, but there's a difference between playing fast and being hurried. Missouri hurried them. So if Tennessee can get back, avoid giving up fast break points, and hurry Florida, apply enough ball pressure, which Zakai Ziegler can absolutely do. He's done it to everybody he's played this year. Jemai Mashack can do that because he's done that to every team they've played this year. If Tennessee can get it into a half-court game, apply ball pressure, and hurry Florida, especially with the off-ball sets and movements, and rebound, Tennessee's going to win this game. That's really the tale of two different styles here. And one last note on Florida, because I just remembered this, and I would be remiss if I didn't say this. At Dennis Gates' press conference last night, whenever Florida beat Missouri, he was talking about why he thinks Florida is the best team in the country, and he made an interesting note, and this is true. Florida is the only team in the SEC that did not have a losing streak this year. Didn't have one single losing streak. Bounced back after every loss. There were a lot of losses. They bounced back after all of them when they did have them. All 15 to 16 teams in the SEC experienced a losing streak during conference play. Not the Florida Gators. So that's another good part of their resume that they can use for Selection Sunday, which is crazy that it's tomorrow. So Florida-Tennessee SEC championship game. Cannot wait. I'll answer one more question before we go. Steven pops in here and says, does Texas get in now? Don't think so. And it's also going to depend on what happens in Colorado State and Boise State in the Mountain West Championship game. Boise State, I think, really needs to win it more. I mean, they both obviously need to win it because you're not sweating it out Selection Sunday. I think Colorado State has a better case for an at-large than Boise State does. Boise State would be more of the bid thief than Colorado State because I think Colorado State can still get in. I think we'll get 3 Mountain West Conference teams in if Boise State beats Colorado State. I feel pretty good about that one. So that's going to steal a bid from somebody. I don't see North Carolina getting in, especially after blowing a shot to really get a resume-defining win last night, which Jalen Withers, man, heart hurts for that kid. Just a really bad mental error at the worst part of the season to have a bad mental error. Hate it for that kid, but I think that's a disqualifier for North Carolina. That game and how it ended and how the season's gone with only one quad one win in 13 tries. They've had ample opportunity to beat really good teams. They just haven't done it. If you can't prove that you can beat a lot of good teams and you've shown the propensity to lose to even some pedestrian ones like Stanford, I don't think you've proven yourself worthy of being in the NCAA tournament. And then the Big West tonight, if UC Irvine beats UC San Diego, I won't be surprised if the committee even leans towards putting San Diego in just because they do have a couple quad one wins, which is more than what North Carolina has. And they are really good in predictive metrics, and they are very comparable in a lot of the metrics that the committee looks like KPI, RPI, net, all types of different, resume-based metrics. So I can say with maybe about 75% sure, or I guess positivity here, Stephen, that I don't think Texas gets in. It's just not looking likely. I think they really needed to get that Tennessee win to put them up over the top. The issue with Texas, yes, I know they have 7 quad 1 wins, and that's a lot, and that's going to be a lot for a team that gets left out of the tournament, but they are under 500 in quads 1 through 3. You combine their records in quad 1, 2, and 3, and they are still under 500, which means the only reason they're above 500 in their record overall is because they took advantage of quad 4 games, which I believe they had 7 of. That's just not good enough. I would even say the committee would be more likely to put Indiana in if just looking at metrics. Yes, Indiana is a lot further behind in things like net, KPI, wins above bubble, a lot of those metrics that the committee does use. Indiana's further behind than a Texas and North Carolina. But Indiana, unlike Texas and North Carolina, Indiana does not have a loss outside the quad 1. Indiana also has a marquee win at Michigan State, who is the Big Ten regular season champion. Michigan State probably going to be a 2 or a 3 seed in the NCAA tournament tomorrow. That's all I got for today. Again, tomorrow, Florida, Tennessee, 2 clashing styles. A top 5 offense in KenPom versus in Florida, a top 5 defense in KenPom defense or KenPom defense with Tennessee. Going to be a fantastic style clash at Bridgestone Arena. It's going to be the perfect ending to an epic SEC championship game. Thank you guys for joining me. If you're watching this afterwards, appreciate you watching. I'm Elijah Campbell, and as always, all my content, all my coverage of the SEC men's basketball tournament here in Nashville, brought to you by Columbia Craft and Peak Drift. Those are 2 quality brands that are teaming up to make award-winning craft beer in the state of South Carolina. I thank them a ton. And I can't wait to crack and open a Famously Hop once I get back home because I'm out of my inventory here in Nashville. So once again, Florida, Tennessee, tomorrow. Join me here after the game. Let's talk about it. Until then, take it easy, guys. See you tomorrow.